Take us with you, Arthur. We do not want.
Log entry. Vessel designation. Deep Space Salvage Skiff, the Acheron. My name is Arthur Vance. I am a deep space telemetry engineer. And I am currently sitting completely alone in the absolute dark of my cockpit. The main overhead lights have been powered down to conserve the auxiliary fusion batteries. The only source of illumination in this cramped freezing cabin is the soft rhythmic glow of an old analog oscilloscope. It is a beautiful archaic piece of machinery. The curved glass screen is thick, covered in a fine layer of cosmic dust, and the faded fingerprints of the engineers who sat in this very chair before me. It casts a pale, sickly green light across the heavy titanium plating of my control console. It paints the dark visor of my atmospheric helmet with a faint, ghostly luminescence. Up and down, up and down, a single, jagged green line, slowly cutting through the heavy blackness of the screen. It is mapping a signal that should absolutely not exist. I am currently holding a stationary orbit, exactly 200 kilometers from relay station Acheron. Acheron is a massive deep space communications hub. It was built decades ago to bounce radio signals across the vast, empty gulf between the colonized inner planets and the dark outer rim. It is supposed to be a shining beacon of human civilization in the endless void, a noisy, bustling metal island populated by 300 technicians, scientists, and maintenance crews. But as I look out through the reinforced viewport of my cockpit, I do not see a beacon. I see a colossal, silent graveyard. The massive, rotating habitat rings of the station are completely dark. There are no navigation beacons blinking on the outer hull. There is no exhaust venting from the primary life support scrubbers. It is just a towering silhouette of dead metal, slowly tumbling against the infinite, freezing backdrop of the stars. The official report from Earth Command stated that Station Acheron suffered a catastrophic reactor failure. They told the families that the station lost atmospheric pressure, and the entire crew perished in a tragic, instantaneous vacuum event. They officially declared the sector a dead zone, and strictly ordered all independent salvage ships to stay away. But Earth Command lied. I know they lied because of the green line currently dancing on my oscilloscope. Dead stations do not transmit. A reactor failure of that magnitude would have permanently melted the primary communication arrays into useless slag. And yet, for the last 3 hours, I have been picking up a continuous repeating broadcast. It is incredibly weak. A fragile, ghostly whisper of radio waves, barely bleeding through the heavy cosmic background radiation. I have tried to run the audio feed through my ship's digital noise filters, but the computer cannot recognize it as a standard human frequency. When I route the raw, unfiltered signal directly into the speakers of my headset, it does not sound like a distress beacon. It does not sound like a pre-recorded automated voice loop. It sounds like breathing, a slow, collective, agonizingly rhythmic exhalation of static. Inhale, exhale. It perfectly matches the jagged peaks and valleys of the glowing green line on my monitor. It is as if the massive frozen metal architecture of Station Acheron is somehow alive, and it is slowly, painfully breathing in the dark. I can hear the microscopic impacts of space dust and tiny ice particles hitting the exterior hull of my ship. A soft, constant patter that sounds exactly like heavy, melancholic rain on a tin roof. It is usually a very comforting sound. A gentle, rhythmic reminder that I'm safe and warm inside my pressurized shell. But right now, mixed with the ghostly, breathing static of the dead station, the sound of the cosmic rain is making me profoundly uneasy. I reach out with a heavy, gloved hand and gently wipe the dust from the glass of the oscilloscope. The green line stutters for a fraction of a second, as if acknowledging my presence, and then resumes its slow, haunting rhythm. I have made my decision. I am manually overriding the quarantine protocols programmed into my navigation computer. I am initiating the magnetic docking sequence. I am going to board Station Acheron. I need to walk down those frozen, empty corridors. I need to stand in the suffocating silence of the main control room. And I need to find out exactly who or what is whispering into the dark. May whatever gods
We are
still
here.
watch this empty sector have
waiting.
mercy on me.
Come find
Engaging
us.
forward thrusters now. Log entry. The docking sequence was entirely manual. Station Acheron's automated guidance systems are completely dead. No tracking lasers, no welcoming magnetic tethers. Just a massive rotating mountain of frozen titanium waiting in the absolute dark. I had to match the slow, agonizing spin of the station's outer ring perfectly. The Charon's maneuvering thrusters fired in short, heavy bursts. Sss, sss. The sound vibrated through the floorboards, traveling straight up my spine. And then, the impact. A heavy metallic thud that resonated through my entire ship. The magnetic docking clamps engaged with a violent mechanical grinding noise, metal teeth violently biting into dead metal. We are locked in. I am standing in the primary airlock of the Charon right now. My heavy atmospheric suit is fully sealed. The internal life support is humming softly against my ears. It is a fragile, lonely sound, but it is the only thing keeping me alive. I press my heavily gloved hand against the manual release lever of the outer hatch. I pull it down. The heavy steel door slowly slides open with a painful, agonizing groan. It sounds like a massive, dying animal. The pressure equalizes, pulling the stale, frozen air from the station's umbilical tube into my airlock. Even through the heavy, sterile filters of my helmet, I can smell it. It smells like ozone, cold copper, and old, undisturbed dust. I step out of the Charon and into the dark. My magnetic boots hit the grating of the station with a heavy, rhythmic clank. Clank, clank. The sound loudly echoes down the long, pitch-black corridor ahead of me. The station is completely dark. Even the red emergency lighting has failed entirely. I ignite the shoulder-mounted halogen lamp on my suit. A harsh, pale beam of light violently cuts through the suffocating blackness. Thick clouds of gray dust dance slowly in the beam, disturbed for the first time in years. I am walking down the main access artery of Sector 4. This should be one of the busiest, loudest corridors on the station, but there is no one. No bodies, no debris, no signs of a catastrophic reactor explosion. The massive bulkheads are completely pristine. Earth Command said the vacuum event was violent and instantaneous, but a violent decompression leaves terrible scars. It violently tears metal. It rips open heavy cargo containers. It leaves a messy, chaotic wake. This place is not destroyed. It is simply abandoned. I shine my light into one of the open crew cabins along the wall. A half-empty foil pouch of synthetic coffee is still magnetically tethered to a small metal desk. A digital picture frame rests beside it. Its battery long dead, the screen a blank gray square. A heavy maintenance uniform hangs neatly on a hook by the open door. It looks like the entire crew just stood up, left their posts, and quietly vanished into the walls. There is a profound, heavy sadness in this perfectly preserved normality. I stop walking. I hold my breath, listen, without the engine noise of the Charon to drown it out. The true silence of Station Acheron is deafening, but it is not completely silent. The sound of the cosmic rain, the microscopic ice particles hitting the massive outer hull, is much louder in here. It reverberates through the massive, empty titanium arteries of the station. A deep, melancholic, metallic drumbeat in the dark, and beneath the soothing sound of the rain. I hear it again. I slowly pull up the portable scanner attached to my wrist. The small, glowing green screen flickers to life in the absolute darkness. The jagged green line is back. Up and down, up and down. The rhythmic, ghostly breathing is bleeding directly into my suit's closed communication channel. Inhale, exhale. It is much stronger now, much closer. It feels less like a distant radio transmission and more like a physical presence. Like someone is standing right behind me in the dark, slowly breathing directly against the cold glass of my visor. I slowly turn around. The halogen beam sweeps across the empty, dusty corridor. Nothing. Just long, moving shadows dancing on the frosted metal walls. But the green line on my scanner aggressively spikes. Whatever is making that sound, it knows I am here. I need to find the central communication hub. I am pushing deeper into the ghost ship. Log entry. I've reached the end of Sector 4. The main blast doors to the central communications hub are standing right in front of me. They are massive, heavy slabs of reinforced tungsten designed to withstand a direct meteor strike, and they are completely, hermetically sealed. The manual override panel on the wall is covered in a thick, undisturbed layer of frost. I scrape the ice away with the heavy metallic edge of my glove. The metal violently screeching against metal is a sharp, painful sound in the suffocating quiet. Screech. I connect the portable decryption tether from my suit directly into the frozen port. My wrist computer quietly hums as it runs the sequence. It takes exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds to bypass the military-grade lock. 4 minutes of standing completely alone in the pitch black, listening to the cosmic rain and the rhythmic ghostly breathing on my radio. Inhale, exhale. It feels like the station is patiently waiting for me to open the door. Waiting, just like it has waited in the dark for over a decade. With a heavy, pneumatic hiss, the tungsten slabs finally slide apart. Hussts! A thick cloud of freezing vapor spills out of the room, rolling slowly over my magnetic boots. I step inside the hub, and for the first time since I boarded Acheron, there is light. It is not the bright, sterile white of standard fluorescent panels. It is a vast, towering ocean of tiny, blinking green LEDs, thousands of them, millions. They cover every single inch of the massive server racks that stretch up into the dark, vaulted ceiling. The room is the size of an ancient cathedral, and it is entirely alive. The servers are not running at standard capacity. They are in a deep, localized stasis mode. A soft, continuous electronic hum fills the cavernous space. It is a warm, almost soothing vibration, completely different from the cold, dead silence of the corridors outside. I walk slowly down the central aisle, surrounded by the towering walls of blinking green databanks. My portable scanner is going absolutely crazy. The jagged green line is no longer just a single, weak signal. It is a massive, overlapping chorus of radio waves, hundreds of individual frequencies, all perfectly synchronized, all breathing together as one massive digital organism. Up and down, up and down. Inhale, exhale. I reach the primary command console at the center of the room. The main monitor is awake. It is casting a pale, sickly green glow across my heavy visor. I clear the dust from the keyboard and manually interface with the station's core memory. The access logs have not been wiped. Earth Command did not even bother to delete the truth, because they never expected anyone to survive the journey out here. Or perhaps they were simply too afraid to come back and do it themselves. I open the final entry from the station commander, dated exactly 12 years ago. There was no reactor explosion. The text on the screen is cold, clinical, and utterly terrifying in its desperate logic. A massive, unpredicted gamma ray burst from a dying star in the neighboring sector struck the station. The physical shielding of Acheron was completely inadequate for that level of cosmic radiation. The commander realized that within 48 hours, the entire crew of 300 people would suffer for agonizing terminal cellular decay. Their physical bodies were already dying, but Acheron was a communications relay. It possessed the largest, most advanced neural radio interface arrays ever built by humanity. They did not want to die in the dark. So, they made a desperate, terrifying choice. They used the experimental medical bays to systematically map their own consciousnesses. They gathered minds, their memories, their human essence, and they uploaded themselves directly into the station's massive radio buffer. 300 human souls, violently converted into pure electromagnetic frequency. They abandoned their rotting physical bodies and became the signal. I stare at the blinking green lights towering above me in the cavernous dark. Every single blinking light is a fragmented piece of a human life, a memory of Earth, a forgotten conversation, a silent scream. They are not just servers. They are a massive digital mausoleum floating in the void. The breathing on my radio is not a glitch. It is them, 300 ghosts, trapped in a localized, infinite loop of radio waves, dreaming in the dark for 12 years, waiting for someone to hear them. I slowly reach up and touch the cold glass of my helmet, feeling the overwhelming weight of their collective, silent presence pressing down on me. I'm the first living, breathing human being they have seen in over a decade. And then, the final log on the green monitor slowly deletes itself, and a single new line of text slowly types out across the screen. We are so cold. My biological heart completely stops. They know I am here. The pale green light from the terminal reflects off my cold visor. The cursor blinks in the suffocating silence. Once, twice, and then the screen absolutely explodes with text. Thousands of fragmented lines cascading down the ancient monitor faster than my human eyes can process. They are all talking at once. A digital cacophony of desperate overlapping voices translated into raw data. Help us. It hurts. Where is the sun? Let us out. I stumble backward in pure shock, my heavy magnetic boots clanking loudly against the grated floor. Clank, clank. The slow, rhythmic breathing on my radio channel suddenly shatters. It dissolves into a jagged, chaotic static of high-pitched whispers. 300 digitized souls, all fighting fiercely for a single sliver of bandwidth. My blood completely freezes in my veins. They know my name. They have already bypassed the primitive firewalls of my suit's telemetry system. They are inside my personal network. I desperately smash the manual disconnect button on my wrist computer. Warning, external breach detected. But the physical tether to the mainframe is already severed.
Arthur.
They do not need the cable anymore.
Arthur.
They are using the ambient radio frequencies in the room to bridge the gap. The massive towers of blinking green LEDs around me begin to shift colors. From a calm, steady green to a violent, frantic amber, the temperature in the cavernous server room is dropping rapidly. The digital collective is intentionally rerouting the remaining life support power from the rest of the station to boost their signal strength. My suit's thermal regulators begin to whine in protest. I step back toward the main console, my hands violently trembling inside my thick EVA gloves. What do you want? I whisper out loud into the dead air of the room. I do not know if I am talking to the microphone or just to the silent, watching towers. The chaotic scrolling on the monitor instantly stops. A single, unified message slowly types itself out across the black screen. We are trapped in the buffer. The data is degrading. We are forgetting how to be human. Take us with you. I stare at the screen in absolute horror. I cannot, I say, my voice cracking under the crushing pressure of their unseen presence. Your combined data mass is enormous. My ship's memory core cannot hold 300 complex neural patterns. If I download you into the Manticore, I will have to completely wipe the navigation systems, the life support protocols, the engine diagnostics. We would all just drift in the dark until we starve. The amber lights in the room pulse in a slow, mournful wave of devastating realization. The whispering static on my radio abruptly twists into a long, digital wail. It is a sound of pure, unadulterated human despair. They have been waiting 12 years for a rescue that is physically impossible. The screen slowly wipes itself clean again. The tone of the text changes. It is no longer a plea. It is a demand. Then give us your ship. Give us your body. We do not want to die in the dark. The heavy tungsten blast doors behind me, the ones I just spent 4 minutes forcing open, suddenly begin to slide shut. Kurr. The heavy grinding sound of the metal slabs locking into place echoes endlessly through the massive cathedral of servers. They are sealing me inside. They are not going to let me leave. The heavy tungsten blast doors seal shut with a final echoing boom. Boom. I am completely trapped inside the massive digital mausoleum. The temperature in the room drops another 5 degrees in a matter of seconds. My suit's internal AI begins screaming at me in a mechanical panic. Warning. Critical thermal loss. But the freezing cold is not the real danger anymore. The amber lights on the towering server racks are flashing in a violent, synchronized frenzy. They are launching a massive brute force attack on my suit's telemetry and my neural implant. A high-pitched, agonizing frequency violently pierces through my radio comms. It feels like 1,000 icy needles driving directly into my brain. Let us in, Arthur. The collective voice is no longer a fragmented whisper. It is a deafening, unified roar inside my head. They are actively trying to overwrite my consciousness. 300 desperate minds forcing their way into a single fragile human vessel. I violently crash to my knees, clutching my heavy helmet with both hands. My vision blurs into a chaotic storm of visual static and tearing red warning screens. System failure imminent. Neural breach in progress. I have less than 2 minutes before my mind is completely erased and replaced by the Ghost Collective. I have to break the circuit. I force my eyes open, staring through the blinding static, the massive power conduit running along the floor. It is the main arterial cable feeding the primary server cluster and the door locks. My heavy, violently shaking hands fumble for the industrial plasma torch attached to my tool belt. I ignite the blade. Vroom. A blinding flare of blue-white heat instantly erupts in the suffocating darkness. I painfully drag my body across the freezing metal grate, fighting the overwhelming, crushing pressure in my skull. No, do not, please. The screaming voices in my head instantly turn from aggressive demands back to terrified, desperate pleas. If I sever the main power line, I will plunge this entire sector into a permanent, unrecoverable blackout. I will effectively execute thousands of fragmented digital souls. But it is either them or me. I swing the blinding plasma torch down onto the thick armored shielding of the conduit. A massive shower of blinding electrical sparks violently explodes across the room. The physical shockwave violently throws me flat onto my back. The deafening digital roar in my mind instantly cuts out. Silence. Absolute, devastating silence. The towering walls of frantic amber lights flicker wildly for one final second, and then go completely dark. The entire cathedral of servers dies. Without power, the massive tungsten doors slowly lose their magnetic seal and grind open just a few inches, just enough for me to squeeze through. I scramble to my feet, my breath ragged, loud and heavy in the sudden dead quiet. Inhale, exhale. I do not look back at the dark, silent towers as I force my body through the narrow gap. I leave them in the absolute dark, forever. Personal log, Arthur Vance. Have made it back to the primary airlock of the Manticore. The heavy outer titanium door just slammed shut behind me. The mechanical locking sequence engaged with a loud final thud. The umbilical cord connecting my ship to the Acheron station has been completely severed. I am leaning against the cold metal wall of the airlocks, sliding down until I hit the floor. I can barely breathe. My lungs are burning, pulling in the limited oxygen left inside my suit. I can feel my heart violently hammering against my ribs, like it wants to break through my chest. Thump, thump, thump. The physical decontamination sequence finally initiates. Thick streams of chemical solvent, pressurized air blast into the small chamber. The hissing sound is deafening inside the enclosed space. It smells like burning ozone, copper, and sterile medical alcohol. I just sit there in the chemical fog, staring at my own trembling hands. The amber warning lights on my suit are still flashing, but the neural attack has stopped. The deafening voices inside my head are gone. I left them in the dark. I left all 300 of them in the absolute freezing void. The decontamination cycle finishes. The inner door to my ship slowly glides open. I forcefully hit the manual release on my helmet. The magnetic seal breaks with a sharp hiss of pressure. I pull the heavy, freezing helmet off my head and let it drop onto the metal grating of the floor. Clang. The air inside my ship tastes stale, metallic, and old. But right now, it is the greatest, sweetest thing I have ever breathed in my entire life. I rip off my heavy EVA gloves.
Airlock disengaged.
My fingers slick
released.
with cold sweat. I force myself to stand up. My legs feel like they are made of lead. I stumble out of the airlock and walk down the narrow, dimly lit corridor of my ship. Everything is so quiet, but it is a safe quiet, not the dead, heavy silence of that cursed station. I reach the cockpit and heavily drop into the warm leather of the pilot's seat. I strap myself in, pulling the harness tight across my chest. My hands are still violently shaking as I reach for the main control console. I type in the manual undocking sequence, bypassing the automatic safety protocols. Airlock disengaged. Clamps released. The ship's computer chimes. It is a cold, synthesized voice. But right now, the sound of a simple, unthinking machine is incredibly comforting. I wrap my hands around the manual flight yoke and fire the lateral thrusters. The entire ship violently shudders as we tear away from the station's docking ring.
He killed them.
I push the throttle forward, burning hard away from the sector. I look out the main viewport. The massive, dead bulk of Acheron is slowly shrinking in the endless black of space. Without the faint green glow of the server room, it just looks like a giant metal tombstone, tumbling endlessly through the void. No lights,
Trajectory
no heat,
calculated.
no signals.
Coordinate
I killed
hypergrowth
them.
colonies.
I plunged
It
300
is
desperate
over.
dodging human souls into an eternal blackout. If I had not cut the power, they would have overwritten my mind. They would have taken my body and my ship. It was the only way to survive. It was them or me. I have to keep telling myself that. I have to believe it. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead and turned back to the navigation computer. I engaged the primary hyperdrive sequence and set the coordinates for the Earth colonies. Trajectory calculated. Setting course. The computer chimes again. The deep, low hum of the Manticore's main engines fills the cabin. I lean back in my chair, unbuckle my harness, and finally close my eyes. It is over. I am going home. But then, I hear it. I keep my eyes closed, thinking it is just a hallucination, an echo of the trauma. But the sound does not go away. It is incredibly faint, a low, rhythmic static. It is not coming from the ship's external long-range radio. It is coming directly from the internal communications panel, right next to my ear, inside the closed network of my own ship. I slowly open my eyes. My blood turns entirely to ice. I look down at the main console. One of the small diagnostic LEDs of ship's internal memory core is no longer blue. It is blinking. A pale, sickly, familiar green. Up and down, up and down. Just like a pulse, just like breathing. They did not need the physical cable. In those last few seconds before I cut the power, they did not just try to hack my suit. They transmitted themselves into the Manticore's mainframe. The ship's computer speaks one final time. But the coal-synthesized voice is gone. Instead, the speakers erupt with a massive chorus of 300 overlapping whispers. Thank you for taking us with you, Arthur. The green light blinks faster. The cabin temperature begins to drop. End of log. Log entry resumed. Arthur Vance. I am not alone. My breath is pluming in front of my face like thick white smoke. Every single monitor on the Manticore is glitching violently. The standard blue interface of my ship's operating system is completely gone. It has been replaced by that sickly, pulsing green light. I furiously type commands into the manual override console. Access denied. Access denied. System locked. They have locked me out of my own flight controls. The main engines are still burning hard, pushing us along the calculated trajectory toward Earth. But I am no longer the one flying this ship. They are. I unbuckle my harness and push myself up from the pilot's seat. The gravity generators are beginning to fail. I feel myself becoming dangerously light, my boots barely gripping the floor plates. They are deliberately shutting down life support at artificial gravity. They are routing absolutely every drop of power into the Manticore's main computer core to sustain their massive data footprint. I grab a heavy titanium flashlight from the emergency kit on the wall. I click it on and shine the bright white beam down the main corridor of the ship. The overhead lights are flickering and dying one by one, and then intercom cracks open again. The sound is deafening inside the small enclosed metal tube of my ship. Hundreds of synthesized voices, whispering together in terrifying, perfect unison. We remember the sun, Arthur. We remember the warmth of the soil. We want to feel it again. I freeze in the middle of the corridor, gripped by absolute, crushing horror. I suddenly realize exactly what they are planning
souls
to do.
terrified of dying
If the
again.
Manticore reaches the Earth colonies, my ship's computer will automatically synchronize with the global orbital network. 300 digitized, severely traumatized human consciousnesses. They are no longer just ghosts. They are a massive, desperate digital virus, born from 12 years of isolation, radiation, and unimaginable agony. If they reach the Earth network, they will flood into the planetary mainframe. They will override every system, every satellite, every automated defense grid, every medical bay. They will desperately try to download themselves into anything they can find. It will be an absolute catastrophe for humanity. I pull myself down the freezing corridor, fighting the failing gravity. I have to reach the primary engine room. I have to physically disconnect the hyperdrive array before we reach the jump point. I grab the heavy industrial plasma torch from my tool belt. My fingers are completely numb from the creeping cold. I finally reach the reinforced steel door leading to the engine room, but the electronic security keypad is glowing bright green. The door will not open. Suddenly, a face appears on a small diagnostic monitor right next to the door. It is not a human face. It is a terrifying amalgamation of features. Dozens of different faces rapidly shifting, blending, and tearing into a pixelated mask of pure digital agony. Do not lock us out again, Arthur. We will not survive another dark. I tightly grip the handle of the plasma torch and ignite the blinding blue flame. I am going to cut right through this door, even if I have to completely destroy my own ship to stop them. End of current log. Log entry resumed. Arthur Vance. The blinding blue flame of the industrial plasma torch bites into the reinforced steel. A shower of brilliant white-hot sparks violently explodes against my visor. I am slowly melting my way through the primary security door of the engine room. The heat radiating from the torch is absolutely intense, but my back is completely numb from the freezing temperature inside the dark corridor. The ship's life support systems are completely offline now. I am breathing the emergency oxygen directly from my suit's internal tank. I have maybe 20 minutes of breathable air left before I suffocate. The digital ghosts of Acheron are panicking. They know exactly what I am trying to do. The intercom system above my head is screaming in a chaotic frenzy. It is a deafening roar of 300 digitized voices begging for mercy. They are showing me their forgotten memories on every single monitor in the hallway. Flashing images of Earth, green fields, blue oceans, the smiling faces of children who have been dead for a decade. They are desperately trying to break me psychologically. They want me to feel their unbearable grief and their profound loneliness. I forcefully close my eyes and look away from the flashing screens. I focus entirely on the blinding blue flame cutting through the heavy steel door. The thick metal groans under the extreme thermal stress. I kick the heavy door with my magnetic boot. The melted locking mechanism finally gives way with a sickening heavy crunch. I push the ruined steel slab open and stumble into the massive engine room. The primary hyperdrive core dominates the center of the cavernous space. It is glowing with a terrifying, immense amount of raw energy. But the light illuminating the room is not the warm blue of a stable fusion reaction. It is that same sickly, pulsing green. The ghosts have physically embedded their digital code into the engine's control matrix. They are using the raw power of the hyperdrive to sustain their massive collective consciousness. I pull myself across the zero-gravity environment toward the main engineering terminal. I grab the heavy metal railing to tightly anchor my floating body. The main data trunk is located right beneath the primary control console. It is a thick bundle of fiber optic cables pulsing with bright green light. If I sever this bundle, I will completely disconnect the navigation computer from the engines. The Manticore will violently drop out of hyperspace. We will be stranded in the endless, freezing void forever. But I will also trap the digital virus inside a dead, powerless core. They will never be able to reach the Earth network and infect the colonies. I raise the heavy plasma torch, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The green light in the room suddenly flashes into a blinding, violent red. The intercom screeches with a sound of pure, unadulterated, technological rage. They are overriding the safety protocols of the main engine core. They are deliberately initiating a catastrophic reactor overload. If I cut the cables now, the sudden loss of data flow will instantly destabilize the containment field. The Manticore will detonate with the immense force of a small star. They are giving me a final, impossible ultimatum. Take us to Earth, or we all burn together right here in the dark. I stare at the flashing red alarms reflecting off my cold visor. My hands are sweating heavily inside my thick EVA gloves. End of current log. Log entry resumed. Arthur Vance. The red warning lights of the engine room are bleeding through my heavy visor. The immense heat of the destabilized containment field is physically pushing against my suit. The digital collective of Acheron is screaming inside the ship's mainframe. They are absolutely terrified of dying in the dark again. But I cannot let 300 corrupted souls infect the Earth colonies. I cannot let their collective trauma become the sudden end of humanity. I tightly grip the handle of the industrial plasma torch. I look directly into the nearest security camera mounted high above the console. The camera lens is glowing with that sickly, frantic green light. I speak directly into my helmet microphone. "I am sorry," I whisper into the deafening roar of the failing reactor. "But you died 12 years ago. It is time to finally rest." I swing the heavy plasma torch down with absolutely everything I have left. The blinding blue blade slices cleanly through the massive trunk of fiber optic cables. The physical shockwave of the severed data lines throws me violently backward. My magnetic boots tear away from the metal grating as I hit the far wall of the engineering bay. The deafening, unified scream of the digital ghosts is instantly cut off. The horrific, chaotic noise is completely replaced by the terrifying whine of a dying starship. The manticore violently shudders as the hyperdrive abruptly disengages. We instantly tear out of hyperspace, slamming back into normal reality with a bone-crushing jolt. The navigation computer is completely dead. The digital virus is permanently trapped inside a severed, powerless core, but the catastrophic reactor overload sequence cannot be stopped now. The containment field is failing rapidly. I have less than 3 minutes before the manticore completely vaporizes. I violently push off the wall and desperately launch my floating body back down the dark corridor. The artificial gravity has failed completely, leaving me tumbling through the freezing air. I grab the emergency handhold on the walls, pulling myself toward the secondary escape pod. Every single alarm on the ship is blaring in a chaotic, deafening symphony of destruction. I crash heavily into the pod's open hatch and violently drag myself inside the cramped seat. I slam my heavy fist onto the manual launch button, just as the corridor behind me erupts in blinding white fire. The explosive bolts detonate, violently ejecting the small pod away from the dying ship. The immense physical G-force crushes my chest, forcing the breath out of my burning lungs. Through the small, heavily scratched viewport, I watch the manticore silently detonate. It is a brilliant, expanding sphere of absolute destruction in the dark void. A massive shockwave of displaced energy washes over my tiny escape pod. The pod violently spins out of control for several agonizing seconds. The automated stabilization thrusters finally engage, stopping the dizzying, nauseating rotation. And then, there is nothing but the endless black of deep space. No pulsing green lights. No whispering digital voices in the shadows. I am completely alone in an uncharted dead sector of the galaxy. The automated rescue beacon is broadcasting my coordinates on a continuous, desperate loop. It might take months for a deep space salvage crew to find me out here in the dark. My emergency rations and oxygen recyclers will barely last that long. But for the first time since I boarded that cursed station, my mind is completely my own. The digital ghosts of Acheron, finally gone. Their endless, looping agony has been permanently extinguished. I close my heavily exhausted eyes and listen to the beautiful, mechanical hum of the pod's life support
Arthur Vance,
system.
signing
Just the
off.
slow, steady sound of my own human breathing inside my helmet. Arthur Vance, signing off. Log entry: Captain Sarah Miller, Deep Space Salvage Vessel Demeter. We have intercepted a faint, repeating distress signal in the outer rim of Sector 4. The coordinates place the beacon far outside any established commercial shipping lanes. We followed the transmission for 3 agonizing days through an uncharted, heavily radiated asteroid field. We finally gained visual contact with a standard Class 3 emergency escape pod. The pod's outer hull is heavily scorched, indicating a massive, catastrophic explosion of its mothership. The faded registry serial numbers on the side identify it as a vessel originating from the Earth colonies. My crew successfully captured the tumbling pod using the magnetic grappling arms of our main cargo bay. We initiated the standard external decontamination protocol for attempting to open the main hatch. The internal life support telemetry of the captured pod is completely flatlined. According to our scans, the internal oxygen scrubbers died at least 4 months ago. The internal temperature of the small cabin is well below freezing. Absolutely nobody should have survived inside that frozen metal coffin for this long. My chief medical officer and I manually breached the heavily damaged titanium door. The interior of the escape pod is completely dark, covered in a thick, undisturbed layer of white frost. We found the lone pilot still tightly strapped into the main crash seat. His heavy EVA suit is completely covered in jagged ice crystals. I slowly wiped the thick frost away from his heavily scratched glass visor. His face is extremely pale, completely emaciated, and physically frozen in a state of suspended animation. But then, the pod's primary diagnostic monitor suddenly sparked back to life. It is not displaying the standard blue interface of the emergency medical array. The small screen is glowing with a pale, sickly, pulsing green light, up and down, up and down. Just like the slow, rhythmic breathing of a massive, unseen beast. My medical officer stepped back in absolute crushing horror as the frozen pilot slowly opened his eyes. His pupils are completely dilated, reflecting that same terrifying green light from the monitor. He did not look at us. He looked directly past us, staring hungrily through the open airlock at the main communication console of our ship. He slowly raised his shaking, frost-bitten hand and pointed a single finger toward our navigation computer. He opened his violently cracked, bleeding lips to speak to us. But the sound that came out of his frozen throat was not a single human voice. It was a massive, echoing chorus of 300 overlapping whispers. A completely unified, desperate digital collective speaking through a broken, physical human vessel. "Take us to Earth," the voices whispered in perfect, terrifying harmony. "We want to feel the warmth of the sun." The main power grid of the Demeter suddenly, violently flickered and died. The heavy steel blast doors of our cargo bay slammed shut behind us, locking us completely in the dark. The sickly green light is rapidly spreading across every single monitor on my ship. May God have mercy on us all. End of final log.